God was like, and by the way, you're going to just give it all away for free. And I was like, okay, it's going to cost a lot of money and time and everything, but okay.
It is cool to follow Christ. It doesn't mean you have to submit yourself to weakness or being overly passive.
But I was like, I got to write this down.
Whoa.
And so I just start writing down everything. Everything's there of like what we're going to do, who we need, what are like the positions that we're going to have to hire for.
Hey, y'all, welcome to Wealthy Kingdom. Got Ryan Pineda on the podcast today to share his vision for what Wealthy Kingdom is and what we hope it to be. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. About to get started.
What's up?
Kind of cool to have you on as a guest.
I know.
After all these times you being the host.
Yeah, first episode of the Wealthy Kingdom podcast.
Yeah, episode 1. So, man, this is something I'm really excited about. Wealthy Wednesday was amazing, but I feel like the purpose behind this podcast and just inspiring folks to dive into their walk a little more is a real calling for you and for me. So, first of all, just grateful to be able to host something like this and make an impact like this. And second of all, super interested in hearing you articulate your vision for this. And I think going all the way back to how the Wealthy Way started, and where that's led to might be a good spot.
Yeah. Before doing that, let me just say too, with this podcast, the reason that I chose you to host it was because I've just seen your growth as a believer over the last few years. And I've constantly seen you just say yes to, what God's calling you to do and stepping out in faith, whether it was moving to Vegas and just doing it, whether it's been, hey, come to this event, come do this, come do that. You've always just said, yep, and like, hey, if that's what God's calling me to do, like I'm going to submit to that.
Absolutely.
I think you've done a great job also too. Just like you even said it, you're like, dude, I'm going to submit to your authority. Just tell me what you want me to do and I'm going to do it. And, every step of the way you've done it. And, I think your story is going to be a great testament to those out there because, so many people struggle with a lot of the things that you've struggled with, analysis paralysis and overanalyzing and fear and like these things that I was getting on you for years ago. We've known each other for 10 plus years now.
About 15 almost. Yeah.
Yeah. And before you were saved, you had all of those issues. And then to see you conquer many of those issues since coming to faith has been amazing. And so, I think that also too, everything that we do, we don't really know why we're doing it until, the time comes. And so I think like having you on the live streams we're doing for this past, I don't even know, 6 months or so.
6 months, yeah.
We're not doing the live streams anymore, but I don't think it was a failure or anything like that. I think that it was preparation for this.
Absolutely, man. Well, that means a ton.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And, you've played a massive role in leading by example for me because, like I said, we've known each other almost 15 years now, and your walk has always been so strong. For a little background from where Ryan's coming from on that is I was a sort of a closet Christian for a long time, living in the world. I had my faith walk buried deep down, and I've suffered a lot for that. So to watch you, who I always thought, like back when we met,
we were 21, by the way, when we met.
Yeah, 21.
We're 34 now.
Yeah, we're 34 with kids and wives
21.
And
we were
families.
young guys drafted by the Oakland A's, thinking we're hot stuff.
Yeah, we were hot stuff, sleeping on those buses.
Yep,
living in the boogaloo. But I feel like the way that I've changed from valuing what's cool in the world, and hey, I need to do what's cool and what looks cool. And what looks, the way that I see a good man being, it contrasts with the caricature that I was given of a Christian growing up, where it was more of that passive. I viewed it from the sports world as weak because it's like, oh yeah, we're not weak. I don't want to be weak. I don't want to be associated with weakness. And I'm grateful for you because you've shown a lot of people and me from a very very close perspective what it looks like to be Christ-like and not be weak, and to give a real example of what a Christian man and a warrior looks like. So I hope for the folks watching this that they can see that it is cool to follow Christ. It doesn't mean you have to submit yourself to weakness or being overly passive. You can be a warrior and a great man. And you honestly can't be a warrior without Christ.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a saying in the church that, meek is not weak, because, people are like, oh, well, Jesus said to be meek and, all these things, which is weak. It's like, no, a good definition I've heard for meekness is that it's power under control.
Right.
And, weakness is simply, you're just weak. You don't have power.
Incapable.
You're incapable, right? Meekness is the opposite. It's like you have power, yet you choose not to use it.
Yes.
Unless you need to.
Right.
And so, yeah, for me, that's something I've always thought about, where it's like, man, I know I can do a lot of things. I know I could build a lot of businesses. I know I could, pursue worldly things. You know.
Destroy some people's lives.
Well, even, like I was always pretty strong in my walk, even when we got drafted, right?
Yeah.
So like, we met as 21-year-olds. We were single. We didn't have girlfriends. We didn't have anything. It's like, yeah, I know I could have been out sleeping around and doing whatever. Like I had the power to do it.
Absolutely.
Yet, I chose not to. And that's what being meek is about. It's like when you have, you have money now, you have the power to go do whatever you want with money, yet you choose to control it.
Right. And to help people and to put it toward the greater good. And to your point, when you said that you've seen how I've submitted, that's a fearful step to take, where you submit your own control and your own will.
Yeah.
But I remember what you said. Remember when I was moving out here from North Carolina, and I was looking for every excuse to say, oh, nope, I think we're just not going to
you're like, but
list our house.
My mom did this and then that happened. And I don't know, like I might do this. And I was like, bro, you just told me you're going to do it like last week.
Yeah. Well, one of the most meaningful conversations we've ever had was on the phone, when I was knowingly kind of scared. I was like, man, I don't know. For everyone out there, I listed our home in North Carolina on Airbnb as an act of pure faith, per Ryan's advice. And I was like, okay, well, if we're listing our house, we're going to move. And what better place to move than to Vegas, to be more of a part of, frankly, the Bible study here and the group of faithful Christians that I was so inspired by when I would come to visit.
You'd come to visit and you saw it.
I saw it and I felt it. And I'm like, wow, this is powerful. And this is what I want for my family. And this is what I want for my children. And I called trying to back out a few times. And finally you told me a story. And if you remember the story, I think you should tell it now. I
don't even remember what story I told you.
Okay, so you told me a story of your biggest feat of overcoming fear. And you said, look, when I went to buy my first flip ever, first of all, your mom's been in real estate most of her adult life.
Yeah, 30 plus years.
So, and you trust your mom, you love your mom. And she was telling you, Ryan, that flip you're about to buy is in a horrible area. Do not buy it. It's not going to work. It's going to be horrible.
It's too risky.
It's too risky. And you, having no experience with flipping and no backup of cash, no foundation of safety, still decided to do what you felt called to do and buy that flip. And by that one act of faith, which is exactly what it was, you are where you are now.
Yeah.
So many people out there, including myself, have turned away from that moment in fear so many times. And the more times you do it, it's like opportunity cost with your money. You're losing opportunity to act faithfully, and you kind of dig a hole for yourself in fear, and it makes it harder and harder to step out and to have a open heart to what Christ has planned for you. And that story that you told me that night, I said, Erica, I know we're moving to Vegas, period. Like, because I was torturing her, my wife, with the doubt.
You're like, we're going, we're not going.
I don't know. Should we? And it's like, no. We're doing this. I'm going to lead our family to where I'm called to lead it to. And just like God calls us to do, step out in faith. And it's been so rewarding in every way. And like you said, Wealthy Wednesday leading to this and the impact that we can have, not only with the show, but with the music and with just showing the community out there what it looks like to stand on that hill and not be ashamed of your faith.
Yeah.
Be a strong Christian, but not be weak.
Yep.
Be capable. And like the Lion of Judah, that's the mascot for this, is a great example of that. Like you could bite your head off.
Yeah.
But instead, he wants to bless you.
Yeah.
You know,
100%.
So I love it, man.
Yep. No, I agree, man. And I'm excited. I mean, like, look, both of our stories are still obviously being written. But,
of course.
One thing I know for sure, just based on my life, is that each time you take a step of faith, you know, it gives you the confidence and comfort to take the next step and then take an even bigger step.
Absolutely.
And a bigger step. And, you know, to go back to your original question of like, you know, Wealthy Kingdom getting started and everything else, it was all just part of steps of faith. You know, the first version of Wealthy Kingdom in my mind was what ended up becoming just the Wealthy Way.
Right.
And so were you with me on that trip or?
That was before I came out.
Okay. That was before you came out. So about, 2 years ago, you know, I'm on this trip called Wild at Heart, which I've done many times. It's based on the book Wild at Heart. Great book for anyone who needs to read it.
Very great book.
Yeah. Just on what being a man, a Christian man really is all about.
Right.
And it's things we're talking about. Like nobody wants a weak Christian man.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
You know, you're not called to be timid and nice. You know, there's lots of elements to being a Christian man. You look throughout the Bible that, you know, these guys are warriors. These guys are leaders. These guys are also caring and also, you know, lovers of their wives. And, you know, there's both elements.
And imperfect.
Yeah, and imperfect. They all screw up, right? So anyways, we're at this Wild at Heart retreat. It's actually coming up here next month too.
Yeah.
Again, by the way, if you're in Wealthy Kingdom, you can sign up for that right now. I mean, by the time this releases, I don't know how many spots are going to be left, but yeah, you know, we're doing a lot of retreats and events at Wealthy Kingdom. So this one's for men, Wild at Heart. Definitely check it out. But with that event, one of the things that we do is like, basically it's a 3-day event. Day one is like you get there at night and you have this cool little like barbecue and dinner and worship and stuff. And then day two, you go out and do an activity. You know, you can go shooting, you can go hiking, golfing, fishing. You know, you're just outdoors doing stuff with other men, you know, who pick that activity. And then you get together in small groups and you have more worship and dinner and all this stuff. And then the next day, you know, is day 3. And, you know, you once again, you wake up, you have breakfast, you know, a lesson, worship, and then they send you out into the woods for an hour. And so during that hour, you pray and, you know, you just kind of listen to what God's calling you to do. And, you know, I've done this multiple times, you know, having gone to this event before. And, you know, this is at the middle / Q3 of 2021. And I'm like, God, what do you want me to do next? You know, like, I feel like I've been pretty obedient. You know, things are going well. What's next? And I just remember, like, out of nowhere, I just got this vision of bringing together like entrepreneurs, you know, with the framework of the Bible and, you know, leading entrepreneurs to Christ. And I was like, okay, how do we do this? And originally I was thinking, well, let me, you know, just go create like a little mastermind for Christian entrepreneurs. And then, you know, as I was praying about it, you know, God was kind of saying to me like, no, like, not yet. I want you to make something that's for everyone so that you're not like pushing people away. I want you to introduce me through something else. I was like, okay. And so, you know, long story short, I'm starting to think through this and I'm like, okay, you know, I've got this idea. There was no name for it yet. There was no Wealthy Way or anything like that. There was no Wealthy brand at all. I was just thinking through the idea and the concept. And one of the things that popped up was like, God was like, and by the way, you're going to just give it all away for free. And I was like, okay.
That's new.
That's good. It's going to cost a lot of money and time and everything, but okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, I had the vision on my heart. I told my entire team who went with me, a lot of our employees went, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And they know anytime I say I'm going to do something, it's going to happen really quick.
Absolutely. I know that.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get to work on this. So I wrote out this outline and, you know, the first version of the Wealthy Way came out. I released our Wealth Builder Academy. It's just like a 5-hour course detailing what exactly the Wealthy Way is, how I believe you should live life, and it's based on biblical principles.
Right.
It's about, hey, this is, how you got to value relationships and your family and your friends. Hey, this is how you got to take care of your body. Your body's a temple, according to the Bible. Hey, here's how you're supposed to take care of your money. The Bible talks about money more than any other subject, right? People follow me to learn about building wealth. Well, these are the principles I use, and they're not these ideas I developed or some mentor who told me. It's from the Bible, right? And then the Bible also talks about faith, and there's one true God, and this is what it looks like. And so I go very into those subjects, in the course, and I ended up giving it away for free. Anyone can still get it for free, by the way, at wealthyway.com. And like within a month, 30,000 people downloaded the course, and I was like, whoa. And then I created a software for a daily planner to help people stay accountable,
which is now an app.
It's on the App Store. Anyone can get it for free. And it was just this cool thing. And then eventually, I took all the material from the course and everything, and a year later released the Wealthy Way book, which became a bestseller. It's still a bestseller today. And, like basically the whole premise of everything with the Wealthy Way was like, look, I want to just give away all this free stuff that helps people live, a purposeful life, a fully abundant life with faith, relationships, health, money, all the aspects,
right.
So yeah, that's kind of like what was the first version of the Wealthy Way, and like bringing people to Christ. And I'll tell you, one of the big things, a lot of people have read the book and been through the course and stuff. Kind of the feedback I always get is like, man, dude, that was really good. I've realized like I need to grow closer to God. And I'm like, perfect.
Boom. Yes.
That's the exact thing I wanted you to realize from going through this. It wasn't like, hey, I need to be better with my time and delegate.
Right.
And, like that's in there too. But to hear so many people say, yeah, I've been neglecting my relationship. And I see that's why you are the way you are and where you are today is because of not just being so much smarter than everyone else at business, but because when things hit the fan, when you're unsure of a decision, when you don't know what's going to happen, you have your faith to lean on.
Right.
Versus they don't have that.
Right. Well, and with that said too, like, first of all, you're coming from a perspective that not many in the gospel community are coming from, which is a very respectable, powerful, wealthy, in the ways of the world, very successful position.
Yeah.
So a lot of folks out there that are cynical about Christianity or about God or about Christ, they see your worldly success and they respect you for it.
Yeah.
What's amazing and what I started to see the more I came to visit, because since we played ball together, I would come visit a few times a year. And I started to notice as your success grew and grew and grew. I remember coming out one time and I was like, what? People are like paparazziing you right now. What's going on? And you're like, just growing, man. And the foundation of it, and I had this conversation in the car as we drove back from an event. I was like, Brian, what's crazy to me? Because we didn't spend that much time together.
Yeah.
Twice a year, for 5-6 years. And you don't know how success changes people. You never know. What I noticed is the success only happened because you had submitted your life to what Christ and the Holy Spirit called you to. And I'll say of all the people that we played ball with, you're probably the last person that would enjoy being up on a stage with a lot of attention on you.
Yeah.
And so it may look from the outside like, hey, I'm this slick, successful businessman, but deep down, you're a submitted follower and you're obedient. And that's what I saw. And I was like, wow, this is special. And the example that you've set, I think is often easy to misunderstand. So with the whole Wealthy Way and the free app, really it's a way of life that through, you just being obedient and living by the scripture, you've been able to tie that back into your habits, your philosophies, how you treat your family, your coworkers. And I've been through it. It's a fruitful exercise, no matter where you are in your walk, to go through the Wealthy Way book and the curriculum. That's led to the Wealthy Kingdom. And some of the questions that I've received about the Wealthy Kingdom from believers that I really respect are, okay, is the Wealthy Kingdom not for profit? Is it for profit? Why does it cost money for some people to be a part of it? And it's a conversation that we had early on where I was like, hey man, like, can you explain to me like why there's the cost? Because I know that's going to cause questions. It's a bold thing to do. And now that you've explained it to me, I have a really comfortable feeling about it. And the fact that all of the money that anyone would essentially donate to be a part of the Wealthy Kingdom curriculum is going to go back into outreach and marketing.
Yeah.
The only way to grow something in this industry is to have a marketing budget. And if you think about discipleship and what we're all called to do, I sit really easy with spending whatever amount to ensure that, one, I have a presence of Christ in my life, but two, that I'm able to also contribute to essentially introducing people out there in the world to Jesus in the way that the Wealthy Way has. And now the Wealthy Kingdom gets a chance to do that. So I wanted to bring that up because that's probably the most controversial piece of Wealthy Kingdom so far that I've faced. And every time we talk about it, I come away with so much peace.
Yeah. So I'll backtrack a little bit and talk about how it finally got started. So, Wealthy Way is going along and it's great. It's solving the purpose that God laid on my heart. And as we were doing our planning for our own Bible study, our own Bible study's been going on. I've been in Bible study literally every week, as long as if I'm in town, I'm in Bible study. And I've been doing that since 2016. And then I started my own in 2018. So, for over 5 years, I've myself have led the Bible study every single week. And, the end of 2022, we were getting ready to go into 2023. And I took some of the top people, you probably remember this. I took some of our top people who were consistent and leaders in the group. And I said, hey, let's come to breakfast and talk about what we want 2023 to accomplish for Bible study. And by the way, it wasn't like originally about Wealthy Kingdom. It was just like, hey, locally, what do we want to do?
How can we have impact?
Yeah. So we start talking about locally and everything. And one thing I'll say is when you're trying to look for wisdom and discernment, the best way to do it is, get around, godly people and everything else, right? Like obviously praying and reading your Bible is amazing. Going to church is amazing. But, if you're looking for like back and forth conversation, get around other believers that, you respect, they're strong in their walk, because you're going to get good feedback.
Right.
So, bring our leaders together. It's like probably 6 of us at breakfast. You were there, right?
Yep.
So, we start talking about it and we have all these ideas. Everyone's throwing out ideas there. And I don't even know how it happened, but as I'm listening to all the ideas, it just dawns on me. And I'm just like, dude, like everyone needs this.
Yeah.
Because everybody was sharing their testimony of like, how Bible study had changed their life and, how they didn't really have a place before, how, some guys were going to church, others weren't. And this was like their first introduction back into faith because it was a much more, open place for them to go versus just like attending a Sunday service.
Right.
And so, and by the way, I want to make clear, like we want everyone to go to church. This is not a replacement for church. So, it may be their first introduction back in to church or the faith. And then eventually we get them into church.
Right.
But anyways, it just dawned on me while we were talking. I'm like, everyone needs this. Like,
I remember the click.
Yeah. I was like, I was just like, this isn't about just this local group anymore. Like we've done this for 5+ years now. We know it works. We know how to do this. We're really good at, throwing events for the group.
Yep.
And, we've seen marriages restored. We've seen people beat addiction,
and the peace. That
people have peace and people have like true, deep friendships and relationships because of this group. Is why you moved to Vegas.
Literally, yeah.
For this group, it wasn't just for me. Like you don't see me that often, right? Like we're all doing our thing, but you have other people as well now too. So yeah, it just clicked after talking to everybody. I was like, guys, we're just going to take this thing nationwide. Like,
Yeah, it's going to be a heavy lift.
Yeah. And I was like, guys, like it's going to be a lot of work. Cause I already know the lift of building a community and events. And like, we've already done that with Wealthy Investor and everything. So I'm like, we're going to do this and it's going to be really hard, but I'm excited.
Absolutely.
So I remember it, we agreed. We were all like, okay, well, we'll just kind of wait for you, Ryan, on what's next. I don't remember what day that was, but I remember on Christmas Eve, I just felt the Holy Spirit, like I was inspired. I don't want to say I felt like, how the disciples felt when they wrote the Bible, because it's inspired by the Holy Spirit. But I was like, I got to write this down.
Whoa.
And so I just start writing down everything this Christmas Eve. And I literally build the whole like business plan.
Yeah, I remember. It was like 2 days after we met.
Yeah. And I was like, check this out. I send the plan and everything's there of like what we're going to do, who we need, what are like the positions that we're going to have to hire for, all this stuff. And everybody's like, dude, it looks good. Like, and I'm like, all right, cool. So yeah, Christmas Eve that happens. And then I go to work of like, hey, all right, let's go find these people. I need a head pastor. I need this. I need that. We're gonna have to build out all the marketing and landing pages and, all this stuff. And, I mean, to see where, we launched on May 1st. So it took about 4 months of prep and everything.
Maddie with that curriculum.
Maddie crushed the curriculum.
It. Yeah. We'll have Maddie on too.
Yep. And, basically it took 4 months to fully launch. It really took 3 months to do it, because then we pre-sold for a month and then, we launched, and now we're into, 2 months in and we're about to launch the Bible studies.
Yes.
We've got, 40 people, I think, on the initial launch. So there's going to be 40 Bible studies nationwide at launch.
Boom.
And my vision is to have hundreds,
right,
worldwide, and then eventually thousands worldwide.
And those Bible studies are local and in person.
Yeah, they're local, in person. And so, like to take a step back, I guess, the vision for Wealthy Kingdom was this. It was like, hey, let's create this nationwide, worldwide community where everybody can come together, but then let's also break down into local, chapters.
Right.
And, everything else. So, we have our weekly call with Pastor Maddie and other guests and everything. And it's on Mondays at 8 a.m. Pacific time, because I want to just like get people's minds right before the work week. Right. And then now there's going to be the local Bible studies, which is a huge element of, hey, every week you're going to meet locally. We have a curriculum that we're all going to go through nationwide, different series. This first curriculum's on the life of Moses. Yeah. Really cool. And, for those Bible studies, anyone can attend, right? So there's no cost. There's
absolutely
anybody can attend the Bible study.
Whether you believe or not too. Just
you don't have to be a believer. Like
show up.
It's open to everybody. And, so we want to encourage our leaders and people who attend to invite more people, whether they join Wealthy Kingdom or not. Right. Our mission's just to plant these Bible studies everywhere and give a ton of resources to those leaders so that they can effectively build these chapters out.
That's the work. That's where the investment's going.
To give some background to this, first off, I had to get all the people into Wealthy Kingdom initially, right? So, had to figure out who in our current programs wants to join, who's never been in anything, and market like crazy. From there, we had to see, hey, who actually wants to lead a Bible study and take the responsibility? Jesus says you got to count the cost. There's a cost to it, time-wise, financially, making the commitment, there's a cost. And then so for those who, understand the cost and want to do it, then we have to, make sure that they're legit. So we've had to do background checks. We've had to do interviews and, make sure we have a good feeling about this person. Now that that's done, for the last month, we've been now training them and taking them through Bible studies, taking them through training so that they're fully equipped to lead these. But, long story short, they're going to start the week after WealthCon. WealthCon's July 11th to 13th. And, the Bible studies are starting right after that.
Yeah.
And so I'm super excited about that. I think to me, every element is big, but that's the one I'm most excited about. It's also the hardest piece of this, launching all of those local Bible studies. And I honestly, I never thought anything of that because I've just been doing it for so long.
Right.
But, a pastor actually told me, because we have lots of pastors in Wealthy Kingdom. And he was like, what you're doing is not normal. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, Bible studies are everywhere. He's like, no, but, usually a Bible study is, started by a church. And so it's a church, affiliated / led Bible study, and it'll last for a certain period of time, and then it's done. And then the church will launch a Bible study again, like
a small group almost.
Yeah. They just do small groups. And he's like, nobody does Bible studies where it's not affiliated with any church, and people are coming from all these different churches together.
Right.
And it's just a consistent thing that never stops.
Through living life.
Yeah.
With that group of people.
Yeah. And I was like, wow. Yeah, I guess when you put it that way, I can't think of anybody else who has it.
No.
But it's needed. I've seen it in the last 5 years.
Well, there's a level of intimacy to it that you can only get by being, living your lives alongside each other for a long amount of time.
100%. And I know what it takes to build relationship. It's not over a Zoom call.
Yes.
It's locally, face to face. It's like the disciples didn't lay hands on people over Zoom.
Right.
Like, you have to be close to lay hands.
Yes.
And so you got to be right there to anoint them with oil. You got to,
right.
So it's just like, man, even when you talk about healings and other things that maybe Jesus didn't heal them right then and there by touching them. Even when, you talked about raising Lazarus from the dead, or the centurion who, he healed, I think it was his daughter.
Yes.
And it was still, the centurion went to him. The sister
Help my unbelief.
Went to him. And, they were like, Jesus, like, you could have healed them had you been there. And Jesus like, no, like, they're going to be fine. And Jesus still, it was like, they still went to him, like, face to face to do it. So my point is, it's not enough to watch church virtually. If you're one of these guys who only watches church online and stuff, you're missing out.
Yeah.
Like, you're not doing it right. Church was never meant to be this virtual video thing. Is that bad? No, like, it's fine. We have our online, lessons and meetings, but locally, in person, is what the church is meant to be.
Right. The body of Christ.
Yeah. And so the Bible studies are very important to me. And, they're also important because, once we get people in there, whether they're already attending church or not, now they have other people that they know and trust, and they're going to get plugged into a church because now it's like, you got these people here. It's like, oh, great. Like, I'm going to go to church with Blake. I have somebody I know now.
Right.
And, that's going to get them plugged in to the local church. So I'm super excited about that. We're also going to hold other events too. Like, we already did a mission trip, first month, we built a house in Mexico. We're going to be doing Wild at Heart now. We're going to have marriage retreats. We're going to have men's retreats, women's retreats. I'm going to have a massive Wealthy Kingdom event. I don't know how many people it's going to be, but it's going to be more than WealthCon.
Yeah.
It's going to be a massive event where I'm going to have amazing pastors come speak, big Christian, celebrities, worships, big worship team. Like, it's going to be crazy. It's going to lose me a lot of money, but it's going to be great.
But that's what it's all about, man.
Yeah. So, we're going to have those kinds of events, and, it's wherever God calls it to go, it's going to go. So, that's like the brief rundown of Wealthy Kingdom. And I know it's going to continue to evolve and grow,
Of course.
Everything else. But to answer your main question about cost and why do we charge and everything. So you don't even know this yet.
Yeah, okay.
It's actually happening. Well, I'm meeting tomorrow, but right now, Wealthy Kingdom's just a normal business that loses money, by the way. The cost is super simple. It's $600 for the year. It's you and your spouse. It's like, it's really nothing.
Yeah.
So, for $600, Like, it's not that we're making money. Really what $600 does is a few things. One, it provides a hurdle so that not just anyone can join. Because right now, as we know, there's a lot of screwed up people in the world that are looking to cause drama, not be healed. Not like, if you have no barrier to entry, it will cause chaos.
Right. If you're not there for the right reasons.
Well, like if anybody could join with no barrier, it's just like I run free groups. Like we have free communities and things. Like I just know the caliber of people is way different.
Like for networking purposes almost.
Yeah.
And that's not what this is about.
No, but like I just know that in a free group, just the caliber of people is way different than when people have paid and, they're bought in there. But also too, like it's one thing when you got a free group for real estate investing.
Right.
That's one thing. But once you start getting into faith, it's a different thing because there's going to be people who are against, like people aren't against real estate investing.
Right.
Like nobody,
it's not controversial.
No, nobody's coming in there like, dude, everyone here's an idiot because you think real estate like nobody, that's not a thing.
Real estate's not real.
Yeah. But obviously faith is very controversial and, there's a lot of, political things right now that are going on with, the LGBTQ stuff, the whatever, transgender stuff, the Democrats versus Republicans. Like there's just so much going on in the world right now that if you just allow people into this intimate place, like we are creating a place of intimacy and vulnerability, and there's nothing to stop anyone from like that joining, then, you're going to have chaos and people are not going to be able to be intimate and vulnerable. So there has to be some level of barrier. And unfortunately, you also can't just like be discriminatory and be like, all right, well, everyone will apply and I'll pick and choose who I want. Right. So like, to me, this is the simplest solution. That's number one. Number two is, to run this, it takes money. Like I can just fund it myself and it'll be a passion project, but that will only get so far. Right. If people are really bought into what we're doing in the mission, and it's like $600 is nothing, right? If you don't think it's worth $600, then you're not really bought in anyways.
Right.
Like,
especially if you understand where that money's going and what purpose it serves.
Yeah.
It's one of the best places you could put it.
But even then, like, it's $600.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't know and you're like, oh, this ain't worth it. It's like, all right.
Right.
Like I can't really help you if that's where your head's at.
Totally.
So, but to your point, for what actually, is being used for, it's like, the more resources we have, aka money, the more I can hire more staff, the more we can go do more events and throw these things, these retreats, the more we can hire and bring in guest experts and speakers, the more...
And serve people.
Yeah, and serve people. The more we can market and get more people into Wealthy Kingdom so we can launch more Bible studies and just keep growing the community. Like, I'm not going to make any money from this. Like, it's just going to always be reinvested into whatever is going to serve the kingdom best, right? So the part I didn't tell you was I'm actually meeting with a lawyer tomorrow about turning Wealthy Kingdom into a nonprofit.
Nice.
And that's a whole different journey. But, obviously as a nonprofit, it opens up the door for a lot of great things. Yeah. One is, it kind of now takes away that objection somewhat, even though we'll still charge, right? Nonprofit can still have a membership and whatever, right? Most nonprofits do. But, it takes that stigma away of like, oh, I'm just putting money into Ryan's pocket. What does he need more money for? It's like, no, this is not even me. Right. That's
like, we're not getting money to sit here in these chairs and talk about what we're talking about.
No.
Period.
So that's one. And then two is now, once that's done, people would be able to donate to Wealthy Kingdom. Because there are lots of people who are like, like they paid $600 like it's nothing, but they can't do anything else. Right. There are people in the group who would be like, yo, if you've got the right thing to donate to, or through Wealthy Kingdom to whatever this is, I'm in. I've had many people tell me that. So it's like, man, at that point, we can now, start taking donations and planning churches and accelerate this even faster, fund missionaries, give scholarships into Wealthy Kingdom and fund mission trips. And, there's so many things we can do. So yeah, I'm meeting with the lawyer tomorrow. And it's funny because I actually met with this lawyer maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago about starting a nonprofit. I actually paid a lot of money because I was like, yeah, I want to do a nonprofit. Let's go. And one thing I didn't realize was with a nonprofit, you have to have like a very clear agenda of what it is your nonprofit is doing, who you're helping, what you're going to do to help them. You essentially need like a business plan.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't have one. Basically, what my idea of that nonprofit was at the time was, hey, I'm going to go on social media and raise a bunch of money. It's going to be Christian based. And, we're going to just donate the money to other charities who aren't as good at raising money because we're good at raising money.
Right.
So let me raise money for other charities so they can do their thing. And basically he's like, you can't do that. Like, it's not allowed. You have to have your own thing that you do. Right.
An initiative.
Yeah. And he's like, so, do you want to help underprivileged kids? Do you want to help single mom? Like, you got to define what you're doing. And so I was like, honestly, like, I'm not feeling God calling me to like narrow it in like that right now. Like, I don't know. And so what I do is when I don't know and I'm not feeling called, I don't do it. Like, I don't force it. Like, cause I could have easily just forced it and be like, let's just pick something.
Exactly.
And do it. Right. But I was like, nah, I was like, when I'm ready, I'll come back.
Yeah. That's wisdom, man.
So I ended up, waiting 2 years and finally God gave me the vision for Wealthy Kingdom. And now obviously it's very clear who we're helping, what we're doing, the events, the plan,
Right.
It's all right there. So now, we could convert into that and, it's exciting, man.
It is exciting. And I've already seen, just to kind of give a testament to what's happened in our Bible study with just the group of 12 that's now grown to like 20 guys.
Which will be bigger, by the way, once I start
Once it actually starts.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is just what we have going on. With guys that, just need to come and be vulnerable with each other and share what's going on. We had a great Bible study this morning. Guys are just becoming more and more comfortable talking about the reality of what they're dealing with. And, I see for this podcast being a really refreshing place for people to be vulnerable and talk about the things because it's easy to talk about how well your investment strategies have been working and how well your new routine and time management has been working for you. And you serve people in that way, but there's an underlying struggle that the world has, every single person out there has, that they're dealing with their own version of suffering. And if they don't see people that they respect show that same kind of vulnerability to share their suffering, they'll feel alone out there. And a lot of the guys in Bible study have come up to me and said, man, it's awesome being a part of this group because I just don't feel so isolated in my struggle. You realize, wow, we all have a very similar experience.
Yeah. Well, one thing too is, Wealthy Kingdom's focus, which is like what the nonprofit has to be about, is on entrepreneurs and business people. Like, that's the focus. Now, does it mean we don't have just W-2 people who come to Bible study? No, we have like normal W-2 people, right? But most of them are very they're driven to, be like, they have like side hustles and entrepreneurial, like they want to buy real estate, like even though they have a W-2. So it's not just, if you don't have a business, you can't join.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It just so happens the focus is on like people who are interested in business,
right?
And all that, right? And so that's the commonality, along with obviously trying to grow in faith in Jesus. So it's like, man, when you mix those two things, where all of us have very similar, hobbies and wanting to grow our business. I wouldn't say hobbies, but like interest.
Drive. Yeah.
And then we all, are also seeking Jesus. Now, some people who come in, they're not seeking Jesus yet. Well, actually, I'd say they probably are. That's why they're coming in, right? They're like, hey, I'm interested. I don't believe yet.
There's something more.
Yeah, I'm interested. So to that end, what I believe is that audience is so underserved. When I look at, okay, what are the current nonprofits and things out there? It's like, yeah, I mean, there's lots of things for single moms,
Right.
and more power to them. There's lots of ones for, kids with special needs. There's lots of ones for, sex trafficking and what, I can think of a lot of different ones off the top of my head that, that there's currently already a lot of things for. When I think about who's, reaching out to the entrepreneurs and business people, if there was one, I would already be a part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You
would have found it already.
I would have already found it. I'm the guy who would be seeking that. So it doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
And I'll tell you, most of my businesses started because of a need that didn't exist. So I was like, let's do it myself.
Yeah.
And that's basically what happened with Wealthy Kingdom. Because I'm more than happy to go support an existing thing that I believe in.
Of course.
If
it existed, you probably would have.
Yeah.
This wouldn't be happening either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? This clothing brand Scene.
Yeah.
I don't need to create my own clothing brand. I'm in partnership with them.
Exactly.
It's great. So, I'll wear the Rolex.
Yeah.
I don't need to go make a watch.
Make a watch company. Right.
Yeah. So when something doesn't exist, that's when I'm my entrepreneur brain starts kicking dude, this doesn't exist. It's a huge need. Who's going to solve the problem? Right.
Yeah.
And in a normal business, sure, it's going to be about money and whether or not it makes sense to do. But in this sense, this is about eternity.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with money, of more so just obedience. This is a need for the body.
It is.
We have to do it. So it's interesting because unfortunately, rich people and people who are making money and having success, they do get neglected spiritually because nobody's trying to help them.
Right. They're like, you're good. You're rich, man.
You're good. Right.
Yeah.
And, it's the poor, everybody's yeah, dude, we got to help the poor.
Right.
We can all get behind that. But what are we going to do helping these successful entrepreneurs?
Right.
They're good.
What can we give them? They're already rich.
Yeah. And, what does the Bible say? It's harder for a rich person to enter heaven than, a camel to go through the eye of a needle.
Yeah.
And it's true. I talk to very successful people on a daily basis, and many of them are not believers. I would say actually most of them are not believers. And the truth of the matter is they've become worldly successful on their own.
Right.
And so they don't think they need help. They don't even know that they have a problem. And if they do have a problem, they look for worldly answers. And so, I look at this group of people and I'm like, dude, we got to help them because they don't even know.
Right.
And they have so much influence over so many because of their success.
Their abundance, really.
Yeah. And if they're, using it for the wrong reasons, it's going to cause even more problems and souls to be lost. But then, that's for the people who think they're good. There's a lot of people who have made a lot of money and who have built things and had success, but they know they're not good.
Right.
They're going through depression, anxiety, marital problems. Their kids hate them. Suffering. They are going through it, even though on paper things look good.
Right.
And they don't know what to do.
Well, and that's part of what entrepreneurship is about. And I think that in a big way, it's been misconstrued. Just like I said, the stereotypical caricature of a passive, weak Christian that drove me away from Christianity at a young age. Entrepreneurs have the same idea sometimes where, okay, if I want to be successful by the worldly standard, I have to be a savage. Some people think they have to be immoral and to step on others. And a lot of the time that is what drives people away from abundance, because it's easy to misconstrue the scripture and say that money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And to buy into the idea that abundance isn't something that God wants for us. I think what's important about this is you're showing that, it's not step on the next guy to get rich and then live rich while suffering your deeds, suffering the tarnished conscience of bad deeds. You're showing entrepreneurs that, hey, look, yes, you can be successful whether you have Christ or not. By the ways of the world, you can have massive worldly success, but there's a deeper version of success, and that's kind of the wealthy way in the acronym.
Yep.
There's a deeper version of success that reaches past the financial abundance. It doesn't mean financial abundance isn't a part of the formula that God wants for us, to not have fear and guilt. And that's why guys that come in with a W-2 do come in and they relate to the entrepreneurs that are starting their business, because they say, oh yeah, you know, a part of me, like for me, I have a W-2. Part of me says, okay, I am so grateful to provide for my family. On the other side of that, I think God has me called to something greater, and I want to be around Christian men that are growing in their abundance through their gifts, not necessarily toward massive financial success, but toward abundance through their gift in a way that brings fulfillment to their life, to their families' lives. And I think the core of this Bible study is sharing that journey with folks and sharing with people that you can trust, and taking their advice and their wisdom, and sometimes just their understanding, to make you feel seen in your battle, because everybody has a battle. You have a battle, I have a battle, everyone out there, even if they have a flourishing family and abundance, a massive battle. And with that in mind, like, I don't know how vulnerable you feel like being, but we had a drive back from Wild at Heart last year, and you were going through a story of one of your most intense moments of suffering in life, and how everything seemed to be falling apart around you, and that's where you didn't share your vulnerability with even the Bible study guys then. You didn't talk about it with anyone. You turned to Christ, and you were able to pull through it, and it made your life better and better through the suffering that you overcame through Christ. Would you be vulnerable enough to share that story about everything with your son, and with just the space that your business was in at that time, and how it pushed you to that leap of faith that carried you here?
I was trying to think which story you're talking about. I feel like I've done that. I'm just in constant suffering and going through different trials. With my son, is interesting, right? So to backtrack a little bit, 2018 was the first year I ever made over, $1 million in a year. And, I bought a lot of house flips. I bought 150 flips that year. And the market, very similar to what happened last year, had a little bit of a turn. Interest rates went up, and all these properties I bought that I thought were going to be great deals ended up being not so great deals. And for the first time ever, I was like losing money on flips. Still overall in 2018 made a lot of money, but I carried over a lot of flips into 2019. So, I'm going through that. I got all these flips that aren't selling. Now my cash is running low because, I'm expecting to make all this money, and then I'm actually losing money and pushing money out, and they're not selling. So I'm not getting my money back. And so it's just this, big thing.
Cash flow issue.
Big cash flow issue. And, also my wife is pregnant for the first time. And, in January, my wife starts having contractions. I didn't even honestly know what contractions were. I was like, she's like, my stomach hurts. I think we should go to the doctor. I'm like, okay. Our baby's not supposed to be born for another 2 months. So I'm not even thinking she's in labor. I'm just like, man, I hope everything's okay. So we go there. Doctor's like, yeah, she's having contractions and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay. It just went over my head. And he's like, we're going to have to get her set up for birth. And I'm like, wait, what? The baby's coming right now.
Whoa.
And they're like, yeah. So contractions mean, idiot. No, they didn't say that. But I was like, dude, everything. My wife will tell you, Mindy will tell you, there's been very few times, maybe that might be the only time in my life where I literally was shocked. Where I just didn't understand.
Stunned.
What was happening. I've never been
paralyzed.
Stunned where I was like I've been through crap and I'm like, all right, I know what's happening around me. It's time to do whatever. But I was legitimately stunned. Wait, what did you just say? And so, long story short, I start talking to the doctor. I'm like, hey, is he going to live? What's the deal? And they're like, dude, we can't say one way or the other. But, at this point, they're pretty developed, 2 months, out. So, we'll see, essentially. And so, all I had really left to go on was just faith and prayer and everything. And, she ended up giving birth only a few hours later. It happened super quick. And, James was born, and, they immediately took him to the NICU because he couldn't breathe. He couldn't do anything. And that started probably the hardest trial of my life where, he was in the NICU for 2 months and, I didn't know if he was going to live or die. He wasn't making great progress. They said he was probably going to have issues, his entire life. And, my business is not going well.
The storm's closing in.
Yeah. And so everything is all just happening at the same time. I'm not, whatever. Right. And, finally after 2 months, they let him come back. And so, now it's like March, we're still going through the storm in business. And, I'm like scared to death that James isn't going to breathe because that was always his problem. Like, what if he stops breathing while we're sleeping? Like, can I even sleep? So there's so much stress and just different things. And all I could do was lean on God. And, eventually, every night I would wake up with him because, he'd start crying and I'd have to feed him and, all that stuff. And then my wife was going, we didn't know it at the time, but what do they call it? Postmortem depression.
Yeah, postpartum depression.
Yeah. And like we didn't know that that's what was happening. And so she was feeling very, like, I guess, unloved and like I wasn't there enough. And so I started just taking Wednesdays off from work, even though work really needed me.
The Wednesdays. Yeah. It's a leap of faith right there.
Yeah. And I just did what I thought was best for my family. And I figured God would figure out the rest. And, long story short, 2019, that's 2019 and it keeps happening. And, we get through a lot of the trials in business and things turn around and, my son's starting to, improve and everything. And Mindy's, starting to get accustomed to being a mom and all this stuff. And then at the end of 2019 on Christmas Eve, we take James to the hospital because he had bumped his head a couple of days prior. So he bumped his head a couple of days prior. He had a big lump on his head and we're like, dude, we got to get that checked out. So we take him to the doctor. Doctor's like, he's fine. Don't worry about it. He's acting normal. We're like, okay. Christmas Eve, he's like not acting normal. He's still got a huge bump. I'm like, let's take him in again. So we take him in and doctor's like, hey, like we got to get him an x-ray right now. And so we get an x-ray. They're like, hey, his brain is bleeding and we have to take him into emergency surgery right this moment. I'm like, holy crap. Here we go again.
One after another. Yeah.
It's all in the same year. And, that was like the longest. Actually, it might have been the 23rd when we took him in. And then he had surgery on the 24th, like at midnight or something. And, once again, I asked the doctor, I'm like, hey, what's the like, what are the odds? He's having brain surgery. He's not even 1 year old. He's already had problems. And he's like, I can't give you odds. And so, I just remember sitting in the hospital waiting room, just praying and praying and praying and just not knowing. And, a few hours later, he gets done. They say it was successful. We go to see him and, he's active and, he's fine. And, by the grace of God, he actually was able to get released on Christmas Day. And so we got to bring him back home Christmas Day. And that was 2019. It was a whirlwind, dude. And I'll tell you this, right? We're going into that. And then guess what happens next? COVID.
Yeah, immediately after that.
Yeah, like immediately after that, finally my son's back and the business is in a pretty good place. And then COVID hits and I have all these flips and I'm like, dude, is this about to happen again? Like what's going to happen with the market? Am I just going to have to go through all this crap again? And
your employees here that can't come into the office that you're.
Yep. Oh, and by the way,
having to navigate.
Yeah. And also, by the way, Mindy got pregnant again.
Yeah. Wow.
And so,
wow. Talk about stress.
Yeah. So we had a lot going on, but through all of that, right? Like God prepared me in 2019 when I went into COVID. I was like, bro, COVID cannot be worse than what I just went through.
Exactly.
And nobody knew how it was going to be, but I was like, there's just no way. Like I already went through the worst. And so I truly felt like in 2020, when a lot of people went through a lot of struggles and, depressions and things, I was like crushing it.
Because your outlook on that moment wasn't terror and paralysis.
No, I had no fear.
Like
I was like, bro, I've already been through the ringer, dude. This is nothing.
Yeah.
And sure enough, right? God used, a time like that to really propel us to a whole nother level.
Yes.
I got on social media, we did all these things, and real estate actually turned out to be really good. And, the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, and what stands out to me so apparently with all that story, because as one of your best friends, I didn't even know about all of the details of it.
And I didn't even realize I was going through it either, by the way. Like, I'm so naturally optimistic that even though it was really hard, I'm just like, things are hard, but that's life.
Right.
Let's just roll. And then you look back at it in hindsight and you're like, dang, dude. Yeah. Like,
went through it. That's serious suffering.
That was a lot of stuff.
And a perspective shift that if it hadn't happened, and frankly, if you hadn't have run to God with that phase, like a lot of folks, like myself in my past, when I've gone through traumas, running in the opposite direction toward the world, away from God, it takes something that could be a gift and turns it into a lot more suffering than you could even imagine. And so just the fact that, having known your childhood, of course, everybody has their traumas, but you had a very clean experience with your childhood and your parents. And to then go from that to this massive suffering event, I see people who haven't faced trauma in their youth, and their first instance of trauma, they collapse under it.
Yeah.
Because it's heavy. It's terrifying how much suffering is possible for us to go through.
Well, I think the minor leagues prepared me.
Yeah, that too. Constant failure and ridicule.
Yeah. The minor leagues were pretty, I tell people that too. It's like, dude, I mean, we were literally making $1,200 a month, living in crappy apartments and bus rides, and
talk about not knowing that you're suffering.
Yeah. And also too, having constant stress and anxiety that you could be released tomorrow. Like, you don't know what's going to happen with your career. There's no job security, like
your life, your whole life, your identity at that point is on the chopping block daily.
Yeah. You could get injured tomorrow and it'd be done. Like, very common.
But with the way that you were able to run to God with that solution, and really like not hide it from the world, but the people around you didn't notice, like, oh my gosh, Ryan's going through it. He's falling apart. He's this. It's like, no, you had the conviction that, God is going to place these trials in your way for a good reason, to develop your character. And for me, that's part of what this Bible study and Wealthy Kingdom offers people out there that don't necessarily have, because very few people have the foundation for obedience and for just submission to Christ that you had going into that. For me, the struggles that I've dealt with, because it's not like, oh, I moved to Vegas and all my problems went away.
Oh, they did?
No.
Okay.
But the peace that has come from running to God and being able to be vulnerable with other believers about what I'm going through has created a shift in my family and my future that I'm really grateful for. So this is kind of how we started the episode, but I feel like, it's just been the biggest blessing I can imagine. And I hope that people out there understand just how real this whole movement is and how much change it can actually make from a guy that's not, I'm not a Bible thumping Christian that's been perfect my whole life. That's been, I was scared to be a Christian. I was scared to say I was Christian. My friends wouldn't think I was cool. What I mean? Like, there's a lot of people out there, like maybe you're successful in business. You don't want to lose your business buddies because all of a sudden you're Christian.
Your golf buddies.
Yeah. Your golf buddies but take it from me that when you finally take that breath of relief and say, look, I'm going to go pursue the most meaningful thing I can pursue.
Yeah.
Then the people in your life, whether they're believers or not, they will benefit from it.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this too, when it comes to overcoming trials and everything else, right? That's what I say. When most entrepreneurs think it's all on them, that's why they have so much stress and anxiety and everything else. It's like, for me, going through that moment and then through just different other moments thereafter, I've known God's gotten me through other trials before. I'm going to face new trials as time goes on that are even harder.
Yeah.
And like I have the experience now to say, yeah, I mean, God saw me through this. Why wouldn't he see me through this, right? Like I just have to put my faith in him and trust. And what's the point of being anxious or stressed out? Like I can't control it. Like I'm leaning on God to provide for this. And so, my faith has truly helped me do it. But I'll also say, that's like a trial that's not really self-inflicted. That was just like, man, dude, the world is just throwing me one shot after another. But I've had my own self-inflicted trials too, of course, right? Like there are, a lot of guys struggle with drugs or alcohol or whatever. Like, I never struggle with those things, but growing up I struggled with porn. And it's like I had to struggle with that forever. And it wasn't until I got into Bible study that I was finally able to beat it. Yes. This was at the end of 2017. So I was still in my first Bible study before I started my own. And, I remember our leader, John, who's actually become, a great partner of mine.
Yeah.
We've done so many deals together in real estate. He's been he has been my biggest lender on deals. We've done millions and millions of deals together. So it's been an amazing thing. But, I remember at the end of 2017, he had this calling from God to just bring it up in the group. He like scrapped everything that we were going to talk about that day. He's like, we're going to talk about porn. He's like, because I just feel this conviction that we need to discuss it and get it out in the open. Because a lot of you guys are suffering with it in silence and everything. And so, he got everyone. He's like, hey, so I want everyone, if you're struggling with porn right now, to just step up, talk about your experience, whatever, right? And so one by one, people kept stepping up. And for me, it was like the first time publicly, like doing something like that and like admitting, even though I was a good Christian.
Yeah.
That
the silent killer.
Yeah, I was struggling with that. I'm happily married. I've got a beautiful wife, and I'm still doing this crap. I remember thinking when I got married, I tell all the single guys in our Bible study this all the time. Yeah. I'm like, guys, guess what? Too, once you get married and you start having sex, it don't go away.
Yep.
Like you're still gonna deal with temptation,
lust. Yep.
And it might not be porn. It might be porn is adultery, but an affair.
An affair, yeah.
Right? Like there's so many things tempting you, right? The more success you have, the more temptation could come after you, right? Because you have more options, right? Just get up there and I admit that this is something I've struggled with forever. And, it's my first time like saying it out publicly. And, it was just like the most freeing thing. And I never had an environment to do that. At the time I wasn't like bold enough to like go to my wife and be like, hold me accountable, and I've heard people do that. I'm like, I don't think that's necessarily the right solution for this. Like I need my brothers to hold me accountable.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. I admitted and, sure enough, and by the way, actually, let me, before I conclude this story, my wife, I was very open with my wife. Like, hey, I struggle with this, it wasn't like, hey, I'm telling her every time I do it, but I'm like, it is something that's tough for me because it just was. And, anyways, so end of 2017, I publicly admit it along with a bunch of others. And since then, I haven't done it since.
Man.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Because of like the freedom of fully admitting and then having accountability. And then as time went on, it became less and less of a temptation.
And addressing the horrible awkwardness of stepping out and confessing to people.
Yeah, it was embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. It's difficult to do. And I can share a similar experience with the way that Bible study has turned my my inability to resist temptation around on its head. And it makes my marriage richer. It makes my children's lives richer. Makes my life richer when you're not dealing with that secret,
Yeah.
because that's 90% of the weight.
Yeah.
It might not even be the sin. It's the hiding of the sin and the shame.
Oh,
that it
for
brings.
sure. Dude, if you're just bottling it all in and you're constantly living in fear and shame,
Yes.
and nobody knows, and you're trying to put up this front, that's where things get really bad.
Like a stronghold.
Yeah,
which you taught me what that is.
Yeah, that's when it becomes a stronghold. Satan's like, yeah, keep hiding it. Yeah, they don't need to know. You'll beat it on your own.
Yeah, and you're awful for it.
Yeah,
but you should have known that.
So, I think, man, there's so many breakthroughs that are going to happen in Wealthy Kingdom, and I've seen it happen with you. And it doesn't mean that either of us don't have our own struggles still.
Of course.
There's still always going to be struggles. But that's what sanctification is. It's becoming more and more like Jesus, and just continuing to grow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, the breakthroughs that we've seen in Wealthy Kingdom, I think, are just the start, because people out there have needed this. I needed it. I moved across the country for it. And the fact that
if you would have waited, you could have stayed over there.
Yeah, I could have just stayed over there and done it virtual.
Yeah.
But having that thread to the body of Christ every week, and then going local, and then having events, I just am so excited to watch this grow, man. And I can't thank you enough for
I gotta
inviting
add
me to be a part of it.
Yeah, dude. No, I appreciate you stepping up and being a leader within the Bible study, leading on events, obviously now doing this podcast and leading it. And, we're talking about doing Wealthy Kingdom music.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that I'm super excited that you're stepping up for. And to be truthful, I'm kind of envious of you, because on my podcast, right, like we don't really have these kinds of conversations. Right. And I would love to, have more of these conversations with guests.
Depth.
And so I think you're going to have a lot of fun and help a lot of people and have great growth on the spiritual side.
Absolutely.
But, it goes back to, hey, what does the body of Christ, what does it need, right? And so obviously this is needed, and you have the vulnerability and ability to make it happen. And it's like, for me, on my podcast, Wealthy Way podcast, it's like, yeah, we talk about faith, but, there's a lot of business and everything else. And like, my goal is to get those people, like they come in for the business and then they leave with Jesus.
Absolutely.
Whereas here they're coming in knowing like, I'm trying to grow my faith right now.
Right.
So it's like, we're going after two different sets of people,
100%.
But we need to get all those people.
All of them. Yeah, exactly. Because everyone's got their own language.
But to be truthful, I would love to, but I think once again, it's all for the body, but at some point I'd be like, man, I wish I could go talk about business again.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it's always going to be that thing of, the next exciting thing to talk about. Most of it is the fact that the depth that you can pursue with somebody and really get to their core, their story. It's something that, it's the reason I make music and write music. Telling someone's story and helping them to tell their story is the best way to inspire other people out there. So I'm just super grateful to get to help to unravel what makes people tick. Because once you do that, you realize, oh wow, we're all very, very similar.
Yeah.
Like we're all created with the same set of needs and wants, and we're here to navigate it together. So I'm pumped to do that with the podcast, man. And hey, maybe we'll have you back on again.
We'll have me back on so I get my fix of going deep spiritually.
That's right.
No, dude, I'm excited for you and for everyone else. We'd love to have you at Wealthy Kingdom, wealthykingdom.com. Link will be down below, but I'm excited, dude. I'm honored to be guest number one. I'm looking forward to see who you bring on.
Yeah, man. Me too. I appreciate you. And thanks everybody for listening. I hope this was helpful with your life and your walk. We'll see you again next time.